It is day 42 of the Occupy Wall Street protests, and each day brings some new video and some new ideas as well.
You've got mail! You've got mail! You've got mail!
This video taken just a short time ago today in New York City. People chanting, "You've got mail," outside of Citibank. Apparently, several of them wrote letters to Citibank asking to have their money back. Many people today also dressed in costume as the fictional character Robin Hood. Robin Hood's MO, of course, rob from the rich and give that money to the poor who need it the most. The Robin Hood protesters marched from bank to bank in an attempt to occupy the banks. This has, of course, become a nationwide movement, with protesters standing their ground despite threats by police to arrest them if they don't move.
The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching.
This video here from Nashville, Tennessee, very early this morning. Protesters have been occupying Legislative Plaza there for about 3 weeks. They were told they would need to evacuate by last night. Those who stayed, as you can see here, removed from the area by police. Police cite concerns about safety after reports of fights, thefts, and disruptions by homeless people. Occupiers say police intentionally stopped patrolling the area once the camp was set up, leading to the increase in crime. Protesters stood their ground in San Diego. You see police arresting someone right there. In all, more than 40 people were arrested, and people stood their ground again. This video also taken from very early this morning. And this week, of course, marked by the situation in Oakland, California. Iraq War veteran Scott Olsen, who you see standing here peacefully protesting. Just moments later, Scott was hit in the head. Now you see him being carried away, severely injured, taken to the hospital with a fractured skull, sending shockwaves through the world, and in particular through the military veterans community, and as well as the Occupy Wall Street movements. Take a look at this, though. This is video from last night in Oakland. More than 1,000 people came out with candles and signs holding vigil in honor of Scott Olsen. We are told, by the way, that his condition has been upgraded from critical to fair, though he will need brain surgery. Hospital officials say Scott is awake and aware, but unable to talk since the injuries he sustained apparently took place near the speech center of his brain. In some ways, this incident has awakened a sleeping giant. That giant, the military community in this country, many of whom have band together in support of Scott Olsen. One of those people is Mathis Shiro, Afghanistan war veteran and anti-war activist. I spoke to him a short time ago, and here is part of our conversation.
It was shocking and horrifying, and I immediately actually had a flashback to an event 3 years ago, nearly to the day, where another friend of mine, Nick Morgan, was also had a skull fractured by the police on a sidewalk, peacefully protesting when they tried to clear an intersection. It's heartbreaking, especially to think that this young man went overseas twice and came back in one piece to a country in shambles. He goes out into the streets. He's got a job. He's got a house. But he goes out to stand with the 99%, and he's the first one brutalized. And he was in. It's very sad. It's very shocking. But it should demonstrate a clear point to all of us, both this incident, both the incident that happened with Nick. I recently wrote an op-ed just yesterday on the Huffington Post that also references the bonus marchers who were World War I veterans who had a similar encounter.
Let me interrupt you real quick, because I want to go back to, just for our viewers who don't know what you're talking about, with your friend who also had a fractured skull. I think you're talking about the incident a few years ago outside of a debate that was about to happen between candidate Barack Obama and candidate John McCain. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. It was actually the last presidential debate between the two of them. It was 2008, and there was a large protest in Hempstead, New York, out front of Hofstra University. And there was a large group of citizens, hundreds, who were out seeking to have the people's agenda heard, which is what they were calling it. And there was a large group of us veterans there. And we had planned an action. We had written a letter to the debate moderators and had demanded that two of the veterans be allowed into the debate to ask one question of each candidate. And when we marched to the front gates of Hofstra, where the debate was, the immediate of us were arrested. And then the police, the Nassau County Police, on horseback, charged into the intersection to clear it of protesters. And when protesters were trapped between a wall to their rear and the advancing horses, they were trampled. And there were veterans trampled in uniform. And yes, Nick is my very dear friend, and he almost lost his life that night. And so when I saw these images of Scott, immediately I had flashbacks to images of Nick.
And you were also bringing up, in your last answer, you were bringing up the bonus marchers, the bonus army, of course, after World War I, right here in Washington, D.C. They, of course, were promised bonuses, and during the Great Depression, they came to D.C., to Washington, to collect that money, ended up camping out for several weeks, and the army was sent in with horses to set fire to the places that they were staying. Why is it that what you saw with Scott Olsen reminded you of that?
Well, it reminds me that the United States stands ready to do violence against anybody, especially as its own citizens, even if they're veterans. Being a veteran makes absolutely no difference when it comes to being brutalized by the police, demonstrating and protesting in this country.
Mathis, a lot of veterans who return from their service, who return from Iraq, Afghanistan, when they leave, whether it's the Marine Corps or the Army or the Navy, a lot of them go into jobs that involve some sort of security. A lot of them become contractors, but a lot of them become police officers. I'm wondering what you think about this fact that there are veterans protesting in Occupy Wall Street. There are inevitably also veterans on the other side of the barricades in the police uniform.
That's absolutely true. And in fact, it's a very easy transition, I would think, generally, from one violent arm of the U.S. state to another violent arm of the U.S. state. Fundamentally, the only difference between the cops and the military is taught to do violence against people overseas. The police are taught to do violence against people right here.
But I thought police were supposed to protect and serve the people.
The police protect and serve the 1%. They themselves may be the 99%, but they protect and they serve the 1%. They don't take their orders from us. They take their orders from them. And look, it was just like when I was in the military and I was justifying the crimes I felt complicit in. To me, it was just a job. I said, hey, it's just a job. You know, I've got to make money. Likewise, a cop out there given orders to clear an intersection of protesters, even if some of them may be veterans, you know, he's thinking, I don't want to maybe go beat this guy, but it's just a job, and I need to make money. I need to make money to feed my family, and what's wrong with feeding one's family, right? I mean, so, you know, it's a twisted logic.
And I want to talk about Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity is a host on Fox News, also has a radio show, and was interviewing a protester, a female protester, and he told her that she does not believe in liberty or freedom because she's protesting, because perhaps she doesn't believe in capitalism or whatever he was accusing her. But we found this on YouTube. This is actually someone who asked a few other veterans like yourself to respond to Sean Hannity's claims. I want to show you what they said, and then I'll get your response.
I think that's the biggest load of I've ever heard. Everybody here loves this country and wants to see it grow and wants to see it better.
Is there anything that you specifically would tell him if he was here standing in front of you?
I'll tell him off. That's what I would tell him.
Other veterans, Math is clearly angry at this kind of rhetoric. What do you think?
Well, first thing I want to say is that I honestly feel that freedom and liberty no longer have anything to do with the American way of life. And that's a sad reality, like I said, that I've had to come home to. Freedom, justice, and the American way of life just don't go together anymore. That said, we all love freedom and liberty, and we want to make this a country where those values truly matter, and they're not sort of bought, paid for, prepackaged, and fed to us. You know, it's disgusting, the kind of ideas these people serve. Sean Hannity saying those things. And it's not just him. I've read, even going up into the violence that took place in Oakland, where Scott was injured, I've read things like the sooner the tear gas and the fire hoses and the dogs come out, the better, and so on and so forth. And these comments come from people who claim to love liberty. And it's insane. You think, how can one honestly believe in liberty and freedom, yet in the same breath demand the violent removal of people from public space, especially veterans? And it's just one more example of why the status quo in this country does not reflect freedom and liberty anymore.